10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It is Monday, August the 22nd, and we are live here on FPC Radio on full press coverage on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, pretty much wherever you can find our website, our content. You can find us live streaming there. So, good morning, John. How are you? It's Monday. Are you recovering from a wild weekend?
Oh, yeah, because that's how I do things. Nothing but wild, Depends on what I eat. My reaction is, when you get older, sometimes you have a meal and it doesn't agree with you. Although I have pretty much a cast iron stomach, so I'm actually in good shape.
Well, I mean, I was going to say wild is all relative. I mean, it's all relative here. But, years of, I'm sure, growing up in a very Italian household, you've had your share of heavy and interesting foods that have probably built up quite a tolerance for your stomach there.
Oh, absolutely. I'm up for anything. I mean, one of the delicacies. Well, actually, it's now considered a delicacy. There's a couple things that's kind of strange when you're growing up. You eat things and they're considered peasant food, and people would give you like the stink eye when you'd be eating it. But now they serve it in high-end Italian restaurants, and it's got fancy names and they charge you a lot of money, and I'm like, hey, I ate that when I was a kid, and people made fun of us.
Well, it's like, well, you've told me, you never tell your family you ever go to like an Olive Garden, right? Like that's just as an Italian, you don't do that, correct?
You're not supposed to, but I like it. Yeah, I mean the salads are good, the soups are good, the pasta dishes are okay. I mean it's fine. I'm not a fussy eiter, Ian.
That's fair.
We had breakfast a couple months ago. You saw whatever they put in front of me, it was gone in about 4 minutes, and I was looking for seconds.
I was impressed by not even needing a menu. That was pretty good. That was
I used to own a place just like that, so I know exactly how I'm good. I'm really cognizant of making sure when I go to a restaurant that I order, correctly. Make it easy for the server so that they don't screw up the order and then the cook screws it up and it comes out and you got to complain. The other thing I try to do, if there's more than two people, I never want to go first. Right, because the first person always, has 9 questions and what kind of dressings do you use and this, that, and the other thing. So by the time it comes to me, I've kind of like broken in the server and I can just go ahead and go omelet, mushroom, sausage, spinach, home fries, wheat toast, black decaf coffee, and they're like, "Wow, this guy's pretty good." So I try to be a superstar as an orderer.
No, I'm the same way. I like nothing. I don't appreciate. There's something. Let's start over there. The thing that I appreciate the most, sometimes the caffeine, your mind, you're trying to align the two dots, trying to visualize, trying to line up two dots that are just kind of swaying back and forth. That's what my mind and my energy and the caffeine is trying to do right now. I'm trying to center myself, so I'm a little bit more focused. So you have to bear with me here, folks. But
that's okay.
For example, I lost my train of thought. I have no idea where I was going with that. So that's probably a good reason, better reason than not to move on to actually talking about what we planned on talking about. On a side note, folks, anyone out there that's paying attention, I have not. Now, some people know I'm in the process of moving. You do. I'm not moving far, just, very, very right next door to where I currently live. However, through years of being very, very cheap and never spending any of my rewards dollars on my credit cards over the years, I was able to purchase a very nice TV and sound system to go into the new apartment. So I am holding out I should be in there on Wednesday, Thursday. That's kind of, those are the days that I'm expecting to finally get over there. I'm trying hard not to watch the first episode of House of the Dragon that premiered last night, the Game of Thrones prequel, which I'm very excited for. I know the original show kind of, it kind of went out with a whimper. We don't need to discuss that. I'm over it. But I am very excited for this prequel. But I was able to hold out watching it last night. I woke up this morning with what do they call it? FOMO, fear of missing out. That's kind of what I felt like, because like I know there's people going to be talking about it. There's I'm going to try to at every cost, that frantic swiping of your phone when you accidentally see something on Twitter where it's like, oh my god, this might spoil it. So you're just going to, I don't know, throw your window out a second story window. I mean, throw your phone out a second story window and just to avoid seeing that stuff. So anyways, I'm trying to hold out so I can watch it in the apartment for the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like big TV, nice sound system. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. But so long story short, don't effing ruin it for me, folks. All right? Don't tag me in Game of Thrones stuff. Don't, say, "Hey, did you watch?" No, I haven't seen it yet. I will let you know when I see it. I'll let you know on the show, actually, because I'll probably talk about it. So, and then,
well, I'm so old. They used to do this with Sportsy, and like Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals was on tape delay. The game was played at like 7:30 at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, but it wasn't on TV till 11:30 at night. And you'd try to avoid the information, and then you'd watch the nightly news because that's what people did back in 1980. And you'd get the sports, and the sportscaster would be, well, the game was wrapped up in Philadelphia. If you don't want to know the score, turn your head or change the channel. Let's never say change the channel, but turn your head, turn the volume down, and you can see the game in its entirety at 11:30. That's how we found out about the Olympic upset, the United States over the Soviet Union in 1980. It was like there was a game today between the Soviets and the United States. It's coming up in prime time, but if you don't want to know what happened, turn away. I mean, just think about that, how far we've come since then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's impossible now. I mean, it's just with everything that, I mean, everything that's available to people. Like obviously in 1980, you don't have social media, you don't have the cell phones. Just go back. Any wrestling fans out there, who are around my age. I'm in my mid 30s. Let's put it that way. Late 90s, early 2000s. There were spoilers out there for sure, but you had to really look for them. Like you had to do some internet search. Okay, what websites, and there weren't that many at the time, had the real go, how do I know who's making a comeback or who's rumored to come back, this, that, and the other. Now it's the opposite. You have to actively try to avoid them. I'm using wrestling as an example because it's obviously something that kind of relies a lot on hoping to keep, well, I don't want to say relies, but it certainly needs a bit of a mystery to kind of, I don't know, keep the appeal. But at the same time, John, I kind of talked myself out of saying it fully needs the mystery, because I go back, well, I don't know, 20, probably definitely over 20 years now. I can't remember the exact date, but there was during the height of the it was at the time WWF versus WCW Monday Night Wars. Raw was going on a tape delay, and again, back then it was easy to, you can't really do that now. I mean, they used to tape SmackDown on Tuesdays. I mean, this was 15 years ago. It wasn't even that long, and then aired on Thursday. So it was never live, but there wasn't this threat of having the entire show spoiled. But anyways, this particular Raw event happened, and it just so happened that Mick Foley won the WWF title, and WCW, having gone live that night, decided to air that to the crowd. But it kind of backfired. So people wanted to see that. So even knowing what was going to happen, they still went over there. So, I mean, there's obviously some pros and cons to it, but regardless, the bigger point is it's impossible to hide stuff like that now. So it's like, you really have to do a whole hell of a lot of work if you're planning on being on social media and not trying to get spoiled with something that's obviously, I'm not talking about like your CW shows that, you really have to find the group on Twitter that actually watches it. I'm talking about like the nationally followed shows, like again, Game of Thrones. It doesn't have to take long to go, think back to what that was like when it was airing, and it was just a cultural phenomenon. Now it's like, you kind of hope as a fan that this one kind of follows in somewhat of the same path, because it's certainly been missed in terms of that void on Sunday nights. But it also creates that, oh my God, I can't, if I miss this is the next few days of just absolute torture trying to avoid being spoiled and all that. So
Yeah, we did that through The Sopranos, right? I mean, that was Sunday night was appointment TV, and maybe going forward, we're going to find out about the Masked Singer. You know, maybe there's going to be a secret that has to be held back on that one.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I I don't know if I'm buying that rumor, but if anyone out there is interested or wondering what John's talking about, no, I'm assuming he's not a big Masked Singer fan, and but the rumor being floated out there was one of the reasons why Tom Brady was absent from the Buccaneers, and he is returning today, folks. He is coming back to practice, so take a deep breath, relax. He is playing. This isn't a second chance or second thought on retirement. Uh, but there was this theory out here that Tom was going to participate in this, and this was maybe something that he agreed to during his 40 days of retirement earlier this spring. And look, the dates, I guess, lined up, and I guess that's the strength of this theory. But I don't know. I feel like that's maybe not the commitment that's so unwavering that you can't break it. You know what I'm saying? Like, have you I don't think I've ever, outside of a clip here and there on social media, ever watched or had any need or eagerness or any sort of motivation to watch the match. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I don't really care. I feel like it's just a celebrity ego pump. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it is. It's like award shows. It's like celebrities go up there that just, celebrate themselves, and it's like, oh, we're one of you, but here we are wearing things that are all more expensive than your paychecks every week. But
the $400,000 gift bag that everybody gets at the Oscars or whatever.
And it's just a
very relatable.
I you know what? I'm not going to get too it's a morning show. I have other terms I can describe this as, but it kind of feels like the same way. It's like, oh, which celebrity is going to surprise you with their voice? And I just don't care. I really don't care. So I don't know if I buy that at all, John.
But a network that signed him for 10 years, $375 million. See? And I don't know if you can get out of it contractually, but this is one rumor that will be either confirmed or refuted, because whenever the show appears, if Tom Brady shows us that he's a great singer, and I'm guessing it's going to be either an Elton John or U2 song. I think those are his two favorite musical acts, that, would be one of those songs. So if we see a 6'5" guy with some sort of mask on singing, Tiny Dancer or Walk On or whatever, then we can guess maybe it's Tom Brady.
What if he's like a Fleetwood Mac fan?
Could be. Yeah. I would bet of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, his musical taste aligns with mine probably more, simply because we're closer in age than any other quarterback. I'm only 14 years older than Brady. I'm like, I could be fathers to almost every other quarterback besides him and Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know what Rodgers listens to. He probably is an alternative rock guy or whatever. But I know Brady is a huge Tube fan, because I was at the same concert with him. He had better seats than I had. Oh. But although I had really good seats, and I wasn't too far from Joe Perry of Aerosmith, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, but
I know Tom Brady's a huge U2 fan, so maybe that's what's going to do. Although their music doesn't necessarily translate to those types of shows, But who knows? Maybe he's going to belt out One.
Yeah, or Streets Have No Name or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, look, there's that connection, obviously, from Super. Look, I'm still kind of pissed that U2 hijacked my phone and put their album on it a few years back. I still can't explain.
I know.
I know. It's like, really, like, that just irritated so many people. But I do have a bit of a soft spot for them, just because of Super Bowl 36. And obviously, I when we talk about Super Bowl halftime shows, I don't argue that Super Bowl 36 was the best from start to finish. I just think it was great because of so many, obviously, circumstances. Following 9/11, I thought the tribute screen, whatever you want to call it, the one that they showed at the end, I thought that was, it was an incredible thing. It was an emotion, obviously, this was 20 years ago, but, it still kind of brings about those emotions. Oh, no, Kyle, I am blaming you too. I'll blame Apple too, but I'm blaming both. I'm blaming both. He says don't blame
Apple.
Blame
They're
Apple.
actually bigger than you two. Yeah.
Look, I got multiple Apple products. I'll stay away from blaming Apple.
That's
like
true
Apple.
too. Yeah, we need Apple.
You two just pissed me off, but with that,
that tribute I saw 3 months earlier in Providence, which is still the best concert I ever attended. It was Halloween night 2001, and they did everything that they did at halftime. And
really? Okay,
like,
I did not know that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord, it's the best concert I've ever seen. I can't see it being topped. I mean, they're my favorite group, so I think when you go see your favorite group, you're gonna normally be pretty pleased with it. But that was spectacular. It was the old Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Probably, yeah.
Which maybe 12,000 people. It was just nuts, and it was 7 weeks after 9/11, and then 3 months later they're at the Super Bowl, and I remember there was a bunch of people, and they were like in awe of what was going on. I'm like, yeah, I saw this 3 months ago, and we were all like bawling our eyes out because it was still very, very raw. But I'd say U2 at Super Bowl 36 and Prince at Super Bowl 41 in Miami while it was raining out, singing Purple Rain. That was pretty magical too. Those are the two, I think, the two best musical acts that have performed at the Super Bowl.
Well, I do think, all right. So I put Prince's up there. It might be my personal favorite because obviously it's one of, it's more recent. But I still can't get over, and whether you love him or hate him, or we're not going to sit here and argue between the two, but the Michael Jackson halftime show. I know it's like, of course it's Michael. No, I mean, it was go back. I mean, it's phenomenal. What he did in those 11, 12 minutes is just absolutely incredible. And it all started with him literally if you want to talk about, we talk about stardom and celebrity and stuff on the show. When you want to talk about absolute godlike power when it comes to being a celebrity, just go watch the beginning of that halftime show and watch him stand completely still for 3 minutes, and the crowd just nonstop. I like it. It's incredible. Like, I mean, how can your ego not go out of control there? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know about you, but I watched over the weekend. Now we're getting further and further away, but we're talking about music, so it's always good. I watched that Woodstock '99 documentary. And and interesting. I mean, I was, obviously, I was kind of on the edge of kind of the age range that went to that. I was 14, so you'd start to get like kids, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That age range at the time, it was the primary, a group that was attending that. But that was just, I mean, you talk about watching folks' egos like explode and and turning that in. I mean, it was pretty incredible in that sense. But like, they were specifically talking about Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit because like, again, I don't know, their music, the environment of the show and everything like that. They didn't really do much to help alleviate everything, but it was part of the ego. And I'm sitting here thinking like, man, imagine that. But then imagine again standing still and having whatever it was at the time, like, was it 60, 70,000, 80,000 fans? I don't even know how many were in attendance at that Super Bowl. Just going nuts when you're doing absolutely nothing. So,
right. Yeah, that's pretty powerful for a pop singer, right?
Yeah. Now, if Tom comes out and does something like that, I'll be very impressed. And imagine of all the things that he's not that coordinated with, he ends up being like an incredible like dancer and performer. And it's like, well, okay, well, there you go. Hats off, Tom. There you go. You got a second.
Yeah,
career.
he does. His song is Thriller, right? At that point,
something like that.
Well, I'd heard stories that Dr. J was a terrible driver. Like, a phenomenal basketball player, graceful, could literally fly. But behind the wheel, he wasn't all that good. He wasn't coordinated driving. And we see these guys play like other sports. Like, they'll throw out the first pitch and they're like, really? Like, you would think that this particular athlete would be better at it than he is. Look, but everybody's got their own thing.
Yeah, look, part of the reasons why I wanted to be a goalie was because my coordination outside of the net was, in hockey rather, is not not that great. Yep. And I used to be pretty clumsy. I've had some very clumsy moments, but that wasn't the only Tom Brady story. I know we've kind of really strayed from the original point of this conversation, but that really wasn't the only Tom Brady story that kind of floated out. over the weekend. Now, take it with a grain of salt because it's coming from Dana White from UFC. But we do know he has a relationship with Brady and Gronk, obviously. And he stated that he was helping to facilitate Brady's arrival in Las Vegas in 2020. And apparently, John Gruden at the time, the coach of the Raiders at the time, put the kibosh on it, as they say. And I'm sitting here laughing because I'm like, well, let's go back to, his free agency and, me saying that 2/3 of the league would be better and no one would be worse with him at quarterback going into that season.
Mm-hmm.
And just this kind of, again, is what we've seen the last 2 years. I'm pretty confident to say that I am right, or I am still right or whatever. But I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, what is it with Bay Area teams? Now they're just from Oakland, so I'm still kind of considering them, Bay Area at the time. What is it with Bay Area teams and refusing to take the gift that keeps on giving, and that is Tom Brady? Now, we've seen San Francisco do it multiple times at multiple stages in his career. But if this is true, now you can connect the dots. Remember what Brady said in an interview on a podcast over the summer, like, you're sticking with that effing guy. I think we can draw the conclusion that, one, I don't think he wants to go to Miami because apparently Miami was in hot pursuit of him and he just didn't care or didn't want to be involved. And two, that MFer that he was referring to was probably Derek Carr, which I kind of find pretty funny. And look, I'm not a Derek Carr hater, but if you're going to tell me the Raiders wouldn't have been infinitely better and perhaps a Super Bowl contender, I'd say you're wrong, because I believe Brady would have made them much better than what they were. But it's kind of funny to hear that. And I'll have to ask you, do you believe that?
Sure, I do. The thing is, the market, when he first became a free agent, was pretty soft, if you remember. Again, teams would say, well, he's 42, and how many years are you going to get? And he didn't have a great statistical season in 2019, but he did lead the team to a 12-4 record. So it's like, well, we'll pass, and we'll try to get our quarterback up to speed. And, I thought it was going to be Tennessee. And Ryan Tannehill was coming off a nice year, but you always take Brady over Tannehill, and we knew the Brady connection with Mike Vrabel. Indianapolis, I thought, should have been in play. Instead, they went with Phillip Rivers, which Brady was still better than Phillip Rivers on his worst day. Then now we hear about the Raiders. Always Chicago was involved, and we thought he was talking about Mitchell Trubisky. We thought maybe he was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, but they share the same agent, so maybe he's not going to go there. This one does make sense, because I had heard at the time that he was looking for homes in Vegas. But again, when you hear that about Brady and Giselle, they could have homes in 32 different cities in the country if they wanted to. And he does have multiple homes, and a lot of people do have places in Vegas. It's a pretty cool place to go, right? I mean,
it is.
The climate's great. There's plenty of things to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's if an athlete has a home in Southern California, Vegas, or South Florida, don't put your intent up and think that they're going there. Those are like three places that people like to live. If Brady bought a house in Green Bay, then we'd say, well,
who wants to live in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers is building. Exactly. I mean, it's certainly not Devontae Adams after 8 years, but I think Aaron Rodgers is building a home in Nashville. Nashville's another place that a lot of athletes like to go. So that's fine. But I mean, I think it probably could have happened. I don't know. Dana White's an incredible self-promoter. So now we're spending Monday, probably tomorrow, talking about this, and he drops it just as the Patriots are going to Vegas to play the Raiders. So now that whole story is going to be, reignited over the next couple days, because everyone's going to ask Derek Carr about this. Like, how do you feel about being called that effing guy? And Carr usually handles these things with class. He's a pretty, class guy. But I can believe this, sure. And then Gronk seemed to be in on the joke, although Dana White and Gronk may have had a couple of cocktails the other night while they were doing this Gronkcast. So, I mean, it sounded like, me and my high school reunion class at a cookout, making no sense whatsoever. But, I can buy this, though. Sure, why not? I mean, I'd like to hear it, because I think I would hope more teams than we had thought would be interested in the greatest quarterback ever. I mean, to me, at that point, the only two teams I would look at and say you're not going to get, appreciably better at quarterback would be Kansas City and Green Bay, because you have two guys that are pretty darn good. But these other teams, sure, you look upgrade with Tom Brady, absolutely.
Well, and look, I said it. I said it at the time. I'll stick with it. I agree with you. I mean, it's you're not talking about this. It's not like replacing Daniel Jones with Tom Brady. Not that
right
difference. But I certainly over the last couple of years, I feel even more strongly about it. I think both of those teams are better with Brady than Rodgers and Mahomes. But again, that's splitting hairs. Again, that's just my opinion of Brady being a better quarterback right now. So logically, I would believe if they had a better quarterback, they would be better. So I'm not sitting here trying to say, no, they're 100% better. But the idea, I think, in this, I think what we're learning, John, is I think that the perception or the reporting that we got at the time probably wasn't as accurate, because again, you have to think back to the environment, the social media environment at the time, and look, Brady was down in the eyes of the public opinion, and a lot of that was too like, oh, finally he sucked, and I'm using air quotes here because looking back, considering what that personnel was and the situation of the season, it was damn incredible that they even got to 12-4 and in that situation that they were, and I think in hindsight, he had a much better season than I think a lot of people, not including myself, because again, I'm not gonna forget to remind everyone how steadfast I was in defending him. But again, to your point, you look at the age, you look at the relatively down year, based on his performance, and I think teams that were probably interested weren't as vocally interested because you're treading on very thin wall. Like I said, every team in the league would have improved with Brady, because again, I felt like Brady was still the best quarterback in the league. But how do you approach that situation and then fail to sign him? And that's a situation I think a lot of teams were dealing with, because it's like, all right, you have a pretty good, say, young or middle age relative to the NFL quarterback, late 20s. Maybe he's on the verge for another contract. Maybe you can win with him, but you have a chance to get Tom Brady for 2 or 3 years and almost guarantee yourself a Super Bowl appearance. So do you cut bait on the potentially young franchise quarterback? And I'm not talking about the Patrick Mahomes of the world, because again, I mean, you look at him as a young franchise quarterback, and obviously not at that time, but like Justin Herbert, maybe you don't, because again, the ceiling is too high. Although again, maybe you improve in the short term, you think more long term. So these teams had to navigate this very gingerly. How do we do this? Tampa. Look at what Tampa did. I mean, if they didn't sign Tom Brady, they would have been screwed, because they would have absolutely burnt the bridge with Jameis Winston. And then they would have been right back to what they were. And that was a team that had won a playoff game in 20 years, almost 20 years. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a risk on their part, obviously, because if it didn't work out, you go back to whatever you have to do to go back in the draft to sign a free agent. And the good thing is now the quarterbacks do move. You can trade for them. If they get the free agency, that's a different issue, but you can't trade for quarterbacks now. It happened this offseason with Russell Wilson, and I know Deshaun Watson's kind of a unique case. Yeah, I mean, with Mahomes, obviously, he just won the Super Bowl, and he's so much younger, and you're not going to move on from him. But yeah, I mean, if you've got to look, San Francisco got to the Super Bowl, came close, lost. At that point, they have an opportunity to get Tom Brady. He's going to be an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo, right? I mean, first of all, he's more durable, which sounds crazy, even though he's 15 years older than Garoppolo, and he's a better quarterback. But then again, you know what you have to weigh into this stuff, Ian, is the ego of these coaches.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about John Gruden, Kyle Shanahan. These guys have massive egos. Like, they think any quarterback could work in their system, right? I mean, like, Kyle Shanahan looks at it and goes, just give me a quarterback who's going to paint by numbers and do what I tell him, and we're going to be fine. And I'm sure John Gruden feels the same way. So it's like, yeah, Tom Brady, yeah, he's good, but, this guy is almost as good, and I can make him as good as Tom Brady. That's the massive ego these guys have. I mean, Bill Walsh thought that he made Joe Montana. And look, he helped him. No question. He didn't make him. I mean, he won a Super Bowl after Bill Walsh left town. with a loaded roster, yes. But yeah, the coaches have, I think, bigger egos than the players at some point, because in that sport, they, for the most part, have more power, although now the quarterbacks are catching up and maybe surpassing the power of the head coaches.
Well, especially when it comes to money, and that kind of,
absolutely.
I mean, when you're paying someone $40 some odd million a year, you're gonna listen to them whether they're right or wrong. You know, it's kind of what it is. So, yeah, look, San Francisco, I'm right there. They made a huge mistake. I'll give Gruden some credit, because he was very much behind Derek Carr from the beginning, before any of this. So, you know, I can understand why he's looking at it like, okay, I have a 10-year contract. You know what I mean? Like, if we sign Tom Brady, say he plays for 2 years, that was kind of maybe the assumption going into 2020. 2 more years. Might be 2 great years, but then you're setting yourself up to rebuild the final 5 years of your contract. So again, maybe he just looked at it like, okay, you know, I've committed to Derek Carr. I've worked with Derek Carr. You know, be great to, you know what I mean, that type. But at the same time, if you set aside your ego and realize that, like, oh, you know what? Forget about Derek Carr. You have the greatest quarterback of all time, coming off, you know, 3 Super Bowl or 4 Super Bowl appearances in the last 6 years, you know, an MVP like 2 years before that. Like, maybe you just say screw it and say, hey, I got a 10-year contract. Why the hell not? But going back to Indy, look at what Indy's gone through now. Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, now Matt Ryan. All 3 quarterbacks on a far lesser tier than Tom Brady currently and all time. I mean, I like Matt Ryan, but he's not Tom Brady.
No.
And I think of the 3 quarterbacks, I do think Matt Ryan is going to be the better of the 3. But gosh, if the Colts just signed Tom Brady, they would have won a Super Bowl by now in the last 2 years. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, look at the running game they have with Jonathan Taylor. They've got a great offensive line, a fast defense. I think Frank Reich's a really good coach. Absolutely. I mean, they made the playoffs with Phillip Rivers and nearly won in Buffalo. Remember that on divisional round weekend or wild card weekend or whichever it was. They put up a real battle. I think Brady wins that game since he owns the Buffalo Bills. And again, this is a revisionist history, but yeah, I mean, he just makes you infinitely better, right? I mean, on the field, off the field, all of that stuff. Yeah, Indianapolis is a weird situation. They've had like 5 different quarterbacks in 5 years.
Yep.
Right? I mean, because you had in 18, you had Andrew Luck, and then you went to Brissett, then you went to Rivers, and then you went to Wentz, and now you're Ryan. And then also in 17, Luck was hurt. So, I mean, it's like every single year you've had a different quarterback, which, you know, makes you appreciate being a Packers fan, because they've had 2 guys in the last 30 years. But, yeah, he's going to help anybody out. But here's the thing. It's almost like if you're a general manager or coach, you look at this and say, okay, I've got Derek Carr. I've got that 10-year contract. It's almost like if you have a really good job, you know, you work for a company that's been in business 110 years, it's stable. There's no chance of you getting let go, but there's an offer in the same field, but for an extra $50,000 a year. But the company's a little shaky. They've got some investors and it could blow up in 2 years. What do? Do you take the safe bet and stay with the company you've been with for 25 years, or do you move on? That's where you're at this point. Now, again, if you're John Gruden, the 10-year contract's guaranteed. You know, so it's not to equate it to what I just brought up is kind of senseless, but it kind of works in the same realm of what they're talking about. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you always take a chance and go for that. And you have 2-3 opportunities to win a Super Bowl. Because look, we're talking about franchises. Tampa hadn't won a playoff game in 20 years, and
since
neither have
the Raiders.
Since they beat the Raiders, yeah, and the Raiders haven't won a playoff game since they won the AFC Championship game in 2002. So we're talking about 2 franchises. And if you want to throw Tennessee and Chicago and whoever else, these are all loser franchises. I mean, San Francisco is a little bit weird only because they just went to the Super Bowl. You know, so Garoppolo still has this crazy winning percentage that he's carried over into even last year. And somehow he's 4-2 in the playoffs and has beaten Aaron Rodgers twice, which I guess is an accomplishment. Or maybe it's just Aaron Rodgers doesn't play well against San Francisco. But yeah, I mean, if you got an opportunity, Brady said it. Remember, I think on that same interview on the Shop, hey, if you get an opportunity to go get Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky, why don't you? And I remember the pushback remember there was pushback saying, "I dare him compare himself to Jordan Gretzky." I'm like, no, he might be better.
Yeah, no, they should be comparing themselves to him. Like, I mean,
he actually accomplished more than those two dudes.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny because people get so bent out of shape, and it's like, wait a minute. Why wouldn't we mention him among those guys?
Right,
like,
exactly.
Like, what are we talking about here? And then it's like, that's when we started to get into, like, remember when people were like, oh, but Serena Williams, and like, look, I know you respect Serena Williams and all these, Roger Federer and all that stuff, but like, when people who don't ever watch those sports or don't give two bleeps about it have to dig that deep to be like, well, no, Serena's a better athlete, or Roger Federer's a better. It's like
it's totally different. Yeah,
take a breath, take a minute away from being a hater for a minute, and trust me, your life will improve, because Tom Brady's not going away, folks. You should have understood this, and you should have accepted it about 15 years ago. And trust me, your life, the fans out there that have done that, the guys that are maybe pushing 40, 45 years old, who, 15 years ago, you asked them, they hate the guy, but not that they gave up, but it's like, what's the use? What's the use in trying to bring that? Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just. Is
he hurting the NFL by playing? That's the thing I always ask. Is I think he's helping the NFL. And look, the NFL is going to exist when Brady retires, when Rodgers retires. They all retire. The NFL is still going to be making billions of dollars, and everyone's going to watch it. And it's the one sport. Basketball's a little bit different.
No one is casually interested in Tom Brady, one way or the other.
No.
It's either intense hatred.
Yep.
Or you love the guy and want to see greatness. So
it's the same with LeBron too, right? LeBron's the same
for sure.
Way. They're the two biggest,
which guarantees great interest across the league. I mean, there's a reason why Patriots games were always highly rated, and it wasn't just because of Patriots fans. It was because there was a lot of fans out there, not necessarily even of the team that they were playing, that wanted to see him and the team lose. So, like, now I honestly, I do think that the pendulum has swung a little bit in Brady's favor. I think there are far more people out there now that are just like, man, I used to hate the guy, but how can you, if you love football, if you truly love competition in the sport, you cannot hate the guy. You can have some biases based on your fandom. That's fine. I mean, again, like, I'm never going to go buy a LeBron James jersey, but I'm also not going to sit here and say, oh, the guy's not one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball player of all time, because I disliked him as a Celtics fan. No, that's foolish. That's just, again, that's not fandom. That's drunk fandom. You know what I mean? That's just like, I'm going to say whatever. No, you can, if you really love the sport, you're not going to hate the guy. Again, you can, like, hate facing him, and you can, be like, I've seen this from Steelers fans. I'll give them some credit. After so many years of getting their asses kicked by the guy, they're just like, you know what? What are we going to do? We can hate him when we're playing him, but, like, how can you hate the guy? Because it's like, look, you can find things about anyone in the public eye that are going to annoy you or hate you. Or if you hate the guy, you're going to always find some sort of reason. But, like, it's kind of hard to find a reason that isn't very bias heavy to hate the guy. Like, people hate him because he kisses his kids on the lips, and it's like, okay, so he's a loving father. Like, just because. Yeah,
I got no problem with that. Like, I really don't. No, I think that's fantastic. That's good.
Like, great. I mean, awesome. Like, I mean, just because their ideas of showing affection are a little bit different than yours, that's basically what it amounts to. So, like, all right, so he's a great father. All right, so people went, oh, he left Bridget Monahan pregnant. Well, no, I mean, he didn't. And then on top of that, look at the relationship the two have today. Like, remember when Tom announced his retirement? I mean, she put out, like, this, like, long, like, social media message, congratulate. And it's like, does that sound like someone that he, quote unquote, walked out on when he was pregnant? No, I mean, okay, that's just a false narrative. The guy's a good dude. I mean, he's corny, sure. Is he a little aloof sometimes? Absolutely. And I think a lot of people get frustrated with that, especially when he plays stupid in front of the media.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's obviously unrelatable, but you know what? So are every other franchise quarterback.
But that's the problem, though. He should be relatable to some.
Well,
not everyone, but to some, because of, he wasn't this superstar in high school or college. I mean, again, you can look back and maybe say that the value, people valued the wrong things when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, because it's easy to look back now and be like, oh, Tom Brady was that guy. You just needed a little bit of fine tuning. But like, this is a guy that works hard, does everything right, doesn't quit, is a great teammate. So like, he should be relatable. He should be someone who's looked upon, but he's also gone from middle class, high middle class. I'll say high middle class, certainly relative to how things are now, but high middle class to ungodly worldwide star because of obviously himself and also who he's married to and the exposure.
Yeah, and I think the unrelatable stuff is some of the products he endorses. Like, Peyton Manning, and look, Peyton Manning's probably unrelatable too, but he sells being relatable.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Chicken parm, pizza, Buick, like kind of the goofy guy. Whereas Brady is, in a sense, more elegant in that sense. I mean, Uggs, Movado watches, the most expensive cars, $8,000 mattresses. So that's the part I'm saying is I think the older dudes like him even more now because they're like, man, that guy's 45 years old and he's still at the top of his game. Well, maybe some 50-year-old guy that has trouble getting up in the morning might be inspired to say, hey, you know what? This guy's doing his thing. I'll do my thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you got guys, regular everyday guys like us getting out of bed and just hurt because of that. And you're like, man, this guy gets up and plays football, for 9 months out of the year and the training and everything that goes with it. So, it's again, I think it's fun. It's definitely going to be different when he is not playing, whenever that is. I hope that is never. Hopefully he gets that. He finds that love of football again, like Aaron Rodgers. Because we know Aaron Rodgers is enlightened and or high or something. I don't know. He's something. But
maybe Brady went to Peru and ayahuasca. Maybe
or he went cliff diving. Remember when he did that and freaked everyone out. Either way, folks. Tom is back. He is at practice today with the Buccaneers and will be rumored to play possibly in their preseason finale this week. So it'll be interesting to see that. But we're gonna say goodbye for the day. My voice is shot. Not really. I just want to get off the air. We've done 45 minutes. I'm good. I'm ready to go. Plus, we have nothing more to talk about, or at least we don't have enough time to start a new subject. So we're just going to leave it at that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Keep an eye out the rest of the week at FPC Radio Live, at Full Press Radio, and, of course, at Full Press NFL and FullPressCoverage.com, FullPressHockey.com. Check that out for everything that's coming up this week, including more FPC Radio, more Full Press NFL Weekly, more Full Press NHL Weekly, and so on and so forth. So everyone, have a great day, have a great Monday, and we'll talk to you soon.